and welcome to Before You Build. I am Ariana Adireh Anderson, founder of ARIID Group, and I have with me our guest speaker today, Michael.
Hello, how are you?
Yes, and you are with?
I'm with Valor & Stone, we're a consulting agency.
Yes, we are very happy to have Michael, and today our topic is going to be about slabs. He is an expert, and I'd love for you to share just a little bit about your background, how you came to the industry of slabs.
Almost accidentally, but I am a stone hound at heart, having grown up in the construction trade. Always loved the look and feel of marble, granite, stones. Just something I fell in love with. I can't explain exactly why, but I love the beauty of its allure.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to talk about a few things that are super important when it comes to terms of when you go to a stone yard, and how do you start and where do you start with?
Absolutely. Honestly, I'll throw it right back at you. How much does a countertop cost?
Right. So that's probably one of the questions that comes up very often. And one of the interesting thing about the stone industry, it's not just one specific industry. It is a combination of four. Can you just talk to me about that?
Well, sure. Obviously, you have the quarries themselves where the material is coming from, whether it's engineered quartz all the way to natural stone, the logistics to get it there. Then you have the slab yards that it shows up at. And of course, then you have the design element coming into it and working with a fabricator.
Yeah, to circle back, there's basically four specific industries that go into a slab. And again, to circle back, it's the quarry, like where the stone comes from, who's going to house it, where you're going to look at it. Then we have the manufacturers themselves, like who's going to cut it. And of course, you have someone who is an expert to help you through the process. So four different aspects. So Michael, please share with the audience for them to try to understand when they show up to a slab yard, and sometimes there's no pricing. What does that mean?
It's really difficult for somebody at a quarry, or a slab yard, to put a price on something because there's so many elements involved. First and foremost, who's buying the slab? Mm-hmm. Typically, consumers don't buy the slabs themselves. That is something done by the fabricator. So they're going to have different pricing given to them. It's going to be based on scarcity of the stone, the value of the stone, the quality of the stone, and quite frankly, the volume of how much they do buy from that yard.
Right. So not a surprise if you walk through and you don't see a price. If you do see a price, it could be misleading. It could say a specific dollar amount, but maybe that's for the slab sitting in the showroom, and it does not include any of the additional costs to move it from a showroom to a manufacturer. And that could be sometimes more than the stone itself.
Absolutely. And it kind of dovetails back, like, who really buys the slab?
Right. So it is by standard to have a professional buy the slab. And it does go into basically it goes back into liability. So when you have a natural stone, you could have fine vein cracks. And the minute someone moves it or touches it, it really becomes their liability. So if it cracks during transport or when someone is actually cutting it, that's another reason why someone who manufactures does the final cuts does end up buying, because they are then liable to make sure that they're looking out for those cracks.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you encourage the fabricator to buy the stone.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Even a lot of times, even contractors can buy a stone. If you go to a shop, they're like, nope, we need to have an installer sign for that because it does have a lot of liability. So there's another element to the cost of stone that varies even on the thickness of it. Mm-hmm. We see there's, 2 cms, there's 3 cms, and there's why do we have different thickness? Why, and how does that affect elements?
I'll try to narrow it down, but typically, since we're here in the Northwest, we're what we call a 3 cm market. For whatever reason, most people have adopted that as the standard thickness for countertops. But in the commercial world or multifamily, 2 cm is the standard, and it is a slight cost difference less. Sometimes you'll see a combination of both with a 3 cm top and a 2 cm full backsplash, so it doesn't have to be milled down. So much of it is based on cost and comprehension and the value of how the stone can be installed.
Yeah, and it does make sense if you're putting something on the wall, you can get away with thinner and thicker. It does go on a countertop, but even if sometimes we do use 2 cms, but then we will almost like sandwich the front of it so that it does have that feel of like thicker, bigger stone. So but it goes back to production and design intent. There's elements, and your experts who are guiding you through the project can help you determine, and could potentially, like you said, could be a cost savings for sure.
Which perfectly dovetails to the question, when you're designing a stone and your design says, we only need 2 stones, but the fabricator is suggesting 3. How do you answer?
Right. So I think the question comes up to us is like when someone is really math driven on our client's side, and they're like, well, this is, we have 100 square feet. Why do we need more? Like it should be sufficient. But how the stone is calculated different is it is basically a piece of paper, and whatever you cut out, a lot of times you can't use the leftovers. Sometimes you can, but it would be for a different portion. It's not the same as calculating tile. Tile, you can, especially smaller tile, like, yeah, there's a lot of backfill. But when you're using large profiles, you would need more materials to cover the square footage, and there will be cutouts. And I think that goes back into another question. When people are selecting stone in the yard, especially natural stone, the pattern. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that, please.
I think it's really important to lay your eyes on it as the client who's getting it installed. Never rely on somebody else's advice when you can go do it yourself. I've seen many people get burned by saying, oh, just pick whatever stone is in this design, and then it's installed, and they're greatly disappointed. So the process is really simple. Go down with your designer and or your fabricator and go find the stone. There's a lot of good yards down there. And guess what? Natural stone is not the same. So yeah. Every slab is different from each other.
It is. It's quite amazing how, it could be the same. You see something on a photo and it's like, hey, this is the brand. And then you show up and it's like, no, this is not what I saw online.
Absolutely. And as you've said before, bring your paint sample, your cabinet door, your tile sample, so you can match them all up together. Because one version of one stone at one company with the same name may be different at another, and you can match it up. Bring your camera, take some pictures, put them all together.
Yeah, and it could be color that's different. It could be pattern. It could be the movement of the stone. There's a lot of things that go into it, which is quite exciting.
Well, and goes to say this as well. Is there a best slab? What do you suggest?
Yeah, what is the right slab? So when it talks about slabs, there's two elements that we have. We have natural stone and we have manufactured materials like quartz, for example. Mm-hmm. Quartz will have more consistency and they're good for specific use. Like if you have high traffic countertops or high traffic kitchen, it's good to go on a countertop, so you don't have to worry about sealing or staining. Now, other materials are durable as well. Like we have quartzite, we have granite, right? Those are tough. They can withstand stains, but they do require a little bit more maintenance. The cost of cutting them is a little bit more too, because they could be strong, but brittle at the same time. They could withstand heat, but they just, they need to have a specific thickness because you just cannot, they will just break apart if they are too thin. But we talked about the thickness and thinness of them. So the right slab will really go back to your lifestyle. That would be really the thing is talk to your professionals who's helping you. It's how do you live? How are you going to use it? And for different application, bathroom versus kitchen will be a total different applications for stone. For sure. So marble, you said, hey, I'm all about natural stone, and marble has been a really hot topic recently, but always it's beautiful stone. There's a lot of gorgeous options, but talk to us about marble.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this up, and it dovetails perfectly to what we just spoke about usability and lifestyle, etc. If you have children, if you like to eat a lot of red wine or drink a lot of red wine and eat spaghetti, white marble can be okay for your kitchen, but you better be ready to seal it up and clean it up, or be ready to have it patinaed. So it's good to consult about what your lifestyle is, because marble is beautiful, but it is softer. It does absorb a lot more moisture, stains, and colors. So it's not right for everybody, but it's perfect in the right spaces for the right molds.
That's right. I want to underline that, for the right spaces. In the bathrooms, so much easier to take care of marble versus kitchen countertop. Backsplash of marble, yeah, or accent pieces, beautiful, and you should totally do it. Again, right application, right stone for the right things.
So let's talk about the process when we get there. Obviously, how do we sign off on we pick the right stone, we're in the process, what does that look like?
Yeah, so that once we pick the right stone and we have that, there's a process called templating. And really it's when your installer comes on site, when your kitchen cabinets are installed, and really measures. As far as we think our houses are perfectly square, they're not. The walls can be crooked, the floor can be a little bit off, and to get a big piece of stone, there is no room for mistakes. It needs to be cut perfectly. And so we need to template that on site, which leads to another question is, and maybe you can share a little bit about some of the processes you've seen about digital layouts of slabs and patterns after they got templated.
I think this is a very important thing as a designer, that you would want to be involved with your client directly. There's nothing worse than buying a slab and then the veins aren't matching up because a layout was not done. It's best to have this, and the technology is there now to actually see in 3D what a slab layout is going to look like so that everything matches up where your seams are, how it's going to look when it's installed. So this is probably one of the most important steps because you're going to be looking at the finished product prior to its installation.
That's right. And just to point out, the slab gets digitally scanned. So because we did mention every slab, natural stone can be so different. It gets digitally scanned by like a 6D printer, or a 6D scanner, if I'm not mistaken, or 5D scanner.
There are so many versions. It starts with Slabsmith, and then there are 3D scanners that are in 16K now.
Right, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And then your slab layout gets applied to that, and then you can really see where the cuts are. And we have ability to move things around a little bit. So like, we really like this collection of movement, and we want this to be in the center. We can move our layout so we can really highlight that beautiful slab, because you are investing so much money, and it is such a beautiful element. I mean, that's the most phenomenal thing you can do, is bring a natural stone into your space.
Absolutely. And the homeowner gets a chance to actually make it their own and their own idea.
I love that. That's really fun.
Talk to me a little bit more. We were talking about layouts, so let's talk about like seams, edges, and overhangs, and how failures can show up even 2 years later when these things aren't addressed well in the planning process.
Right. And again, if depending on who's cutting your stone and the slabs, if it's done properly and we get the right layouts, the right measurements in the space, that will prevent in creation of these gaps. And as we know, things settle as the house is being constructed. Tile shifts, everything needs about 2 years. And if it's not done perfectly, then you will start showing gaps, or even two slabs will start kind of sinking, and now you have an edge that gets cut, and no one really wants that. So making sure that you have a reliable installer, reliable person who's there. I would suggest that for sure. Because there are a number of things that can come up. And another thing to really talk about and really ask, especially before you write a check to your installer, is like, do you know even if you got the full quote, right? There's things that come up if someone is giving you a lowball price instead of giving you a full quote.
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. And I'm going to dovetail off your last question a little bit. The liability on the fabricator after the install is so important. Is that in their paperwork? But also in their paperwork is, did they include the cutouts, the holes? Did they show you where the seams are going to be? Did they talk about what the install costs are if there's a second level, as we talked about earlier, getting there? The time that has to go into it. Is there any special cuts that needed to be made? We talk about shower niches for bathroom work, or maybe they're doing a waterfall edge. Did they lay all of this out for you in very sequential detail of what the tree charges are? And these are things that a good fabricator will have an interaction with the designer and homeowner with to know exactly what those are. So it never hurts to ask too many questions.
That's right. Yes. And then making sure that everything is accounted, even to the detail of the edge, because all of those could add up, and you might think you're getting a good deal, and then you end up, the price keeps on growing, and no one really wants that.
And just in summary of what we're talking about here, it's really good to think about what you're getting into and find people that you trust.
That's
a
right.
good fabricator is going to work really well with a good designer, and they're going to talk about all the elements that there are to cost, and they're going to help you assess the risk to understand what the stone is going to do, how it's going to perform over its lifetime. The way I look at stone is, you have a beautiful kitchen, and it's the icing on the birthday cake.
That's right. Yep. And just to summarize, there are a number of things, I would probably say top key elements for you to really think about. When you are looking at slab, there's multiple of specialties that go into getting that selected. Regards cutouts, with regards templating, making sure that things are done in a sequential order, and making sure you get a full quote for your selection and for what you're doing. So having a good team on your side is super important, because this industry, when it comes to construction, can be overwhelming and is overwhelming. So we're here to help, and Michael also. So we want to conclude our session. We do want to hear in the comments below, like if you had an installation and you were caught by surprise, maybe there were numbers that came up you weren't aware of. Would love to hear in the comments and how that came to a resolution. And we hope to bring you another episode of educational material. Thank you for being with us, and thank you to Michael for being our guest speaker today, or being on our podcast today. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you.